thought I saw Siraj here somewhere, was hiding on the screen, joining us this morning. So thank you, colleagues, my able colleagues assisting me. I'm going to hand over to the members just to introduce themselves, then over to the DJ and his team, whilst the Premier's walking back from the lift to his office and dialing in. Members of the Western Cape Legislature, please introduce yourself.
Good morning, Chairperson and members. Wendy Philander.
Morning, Chairperson and members and officials. Cameron Dugmore.
Good morning, Chairperson and officials. Regan Allen.
Thank you, Member Allen. Member Lecker.
My name is Pat Lecker.
Thank you, Member Lecker. Member Murray, I see you on. Member Murray. I'll introduce Member Murray. We've got Member Murray joining us this morning.
I am joining you, sir. I will never miss a meeting where you chair.
Thank you, Member Murray. I'll hand over to the Premier. I see you did join us. Thank you. Sorry you were in the lift. Probably miscommunication. Premier, you introduce yourself and your team.
Thank you very much, Chair, and to the honourable members. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Yes, I apologise for the I mean, I spoke to the DG the DG and I this morning, and then whether we were going to be together, and then no, it was virtual, and then I couldn't find it in my login, and then I rushed up to the house, and that was locked. So yeah, a bit of confusion, but apologise for being a bit late. I'm going to. I mean, I can see the DG. Dr. Harry Malila is on. I can only see a few. I can see Dr. Fast. I can see Henriette Robson, but I think and Michael Hendrickse. But maybe DG, I'll just hand over to you, and then we can just go down the list. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, I will proceed. Let me introduce the team also just to spare some time. So we have Elmo Geldenes on the line. He's responsible for my APP and departmental strategy. I've got Mr. Jumat, who's the SG responsible for the CSC. Driekus Basson, he's my CFO. Henriette Robson is head of corporate assurance. Dr. Fast, Premier already mentioned, she's head of policy and strategy. Hilton is head of CI, also head of program 4. That is my team, and there's also Linda Grootboom, and maybe just for the purpose of this committee also, Mr. Grootboom is retiring the end of the month, but he has joined us on this call. And then I've got Lucas Buter, who's the head legal services, also in program 5, Michael Hendrickse, head program 3, and then our support team is Nadia Kara. She's director of finance, and I see there are also people here from the AG, and then Ozipo is in my office, and Renee Trout supports Driekus in the CFO office. So that's our team, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, DG, and thank you. And Mr. Grootboom, Premier, these things that people retire at 21 must be stopped. They can't retire so young. This thing has to. Mr. Grootboom, thank you very much for joining us. And here on your retirement, I honestly cannot believe you're retiring.
Thank you very much.
For 6 years on this committee. Please switch on your mic so people can still see you, how young you are. Switch on your camera, Mr. Grootboom.
I look very ugly, Chair.
We all look ugly. It's Friday. But it's fine. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you for your work during the last 6 years that I've served on several committees where you presented and spoke on behalf of this government. So thank you very much. We really appreciate it. And thank you for your service.
Thank you, Chair.
I'll hand over to the Premier and the team colleagues. Like I said before we started, our time at this adjustment vote is obviously only 45 minutes. We do have another meeting in 3 weeks' time where we'll have 5 hours to go to the Premier's department. So I think we should be mindful of that. I did see in 1 or 2 committees earlier. They are coming back later this afternoon. I'm always mindful and respectful that people make plans and meetings, and I would not like to call a whole department back this afternoon, including members who've probably made plans for this afternoon. I'm mindful of that. So I'd like to immediately hand over to the Premier and the DG just to make opening remarks, if we can really manage our time so that we can give members enough opportunities to ask questions as well. Thank you. I'll hand over to the Premier and the DG.
Thank you very much, Chair. So then maybe in the interest of time, I'll try sort of very high level. Obviously, you can see in the budget vote of this adjustment, we've got a reduction of 73.6 million. I mean, fair amount of influence has been obviously the COVID-19 pandemic. So you will see, for example, the reduction because of Promaria and, not able to, perhaps on that side, operated optimally because of lockdown, etc. But then, of course, movement of money in other areas to effect this new normal in which we operate. And so making sure that you will see corporate services, CE, Center for E-Innovation and movements there, obviously also in people management, and then also I think a realignment of the budget. And these are all primarily because of, or a big driver has been because of COVID-19. Obviously not everything, some things are just things that happen, and that's why we have a process called an adjustment budget, where we have to maybe have some environments or move things around. But also, Chair, I think in the interest of time, probably it's best that we just get into the actual detail. I'm not sure, DG, if there's anything specific you want to maybe add to that, and then we get down to the actual line items. So probably the quicker the better.
Yeah. Premier, thank you very much. Maybe just one matter, Chair, you will also see that we are shifting money away, 4.8 million for the Children's Commissioner, because I mean, the question always comes up. Just to give the committee the assurance, we're not losing any of that money. We had 8 million rand for the Children Commissioner, 4.8 million we're moving to next year. Remember, the Children Commissioner has only been appointed in June this year. So the balance of 3.2 covers the salary as well as the goods and services. And maybe also just to give you an update on the Children Commissioner, the salary level 15 post has been filled, and then there's a proposal to fill the DD, ASD, and the also salary level 8 post as soon as January, for the latest February next year. So that's the movement on the Children Commission. And maybe also just to note that we've already put plans in place for her to find permanent accommodation. She's been with Transport and Public Works, looking into the various communities actually to find an appropriate accommodation. And the money that we've set aside, the 3 million, that's been secured. So if we need to find a house, we can do that next year. Chair, I think the Premier summarized all our issues, so we can go straight into the book. Thanks.
Thank you, members. For ease of reference, the coordinator sends specific our own budget vote out, so don't have to go to the big book or the blue book as we know it. Any questions on the opening remarks, or can we link every remark to a page number? Is that okay, member? I see member Dagmar's hands are up.
Thank you, Chair. Now, I support that. If we want to ask anything in terms of what the Premier or the DG have said, I think we should just do it as we go through the pages. I think that's going to help.
Excellent. Thank you, members. Let's proceed on that. I'm going to do page 1, 2, and 3. If members can have page 1, 2, and 3 and raise your questions on that for us, please. Thank you. I've got one hand on page 1, 2, and 3. Member Darkman, the only hand on that. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm just trying to get to the actual page here, but Chair, I would just like to ask if either the DG could respond. I mean, because in terms of this adjustment, it's clear that, you know, the amount of 73 million is essentially what the reduction is in regard to this, and that the vast majority of this amount, as I see it, is issues related to compensation of employees. But can I just I see that further down, and it links to the first 3 pages. I would just like to ask, there was also an amount of money that was returned to the provincial treasury. So I would just like to ask, okay, on page 1, the specific question, first of all, in terms of all of the programs, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and those amounts, if we could just have a sense as to how the department views the most serious impact on those reductions in each of those programs. In practical terms, what would it affect most in terms of executive governance, strategic management, the corporate services center, the CEI, and corporate assurance? If we could just have a summary, how do they see the most serious impact, if any, in terms of those actual amounts, which then total up to 73? That's on page 1. And then just on page 2, there you would see that, the compensation of employees is 50 million and the goods and services is 23. There you would see there's an amount there of 1.5 million to non-profits, which is now not going to be allocated. So can I just ask, had certain non-profits been identified to receive that 1.5, or had an interim allocation not yet been made? So in other words, that non-profit organization would, in other words, not have expected that money. So that's on the 1.5. Those are the 2 questions for now, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Member Dagmo. Can I just add to that, and I'll just link here, then I don't have to ask it later on. On Cromaria, obviously due to lockdown, things didn't happen, and we all know that. Has there been consideration from you working with your counterparts to look at online training, and could that money not, for example, have gone there? And secondly, on the, sorry, but the other point I was referring to, the training specifically, not necessarily the income. To the on the Microsoft, at the time we did the first adjustment, I think the rand was at 19 rand or 18, 15 or 19 rand. We're now sitting at 15 rand. At which point do you fix or pay for the license? Because we obviously know that will have a direct impact on it. Obviously, when we ordered it or paid for this, it was 12, 13 rand. And then 2 months ago, now we're at 19 rand at the hardest point of our lockdown. I saw this morning, I think we had 15, 14 or something. Probably fluctuates sometime today because of these Thanksgiving in America. So which point do you actually pay for it? And is this budget being taken into account? Perhaps the CFO can just give us direction there. And that is my questions from the. Thank you, HOD.
Chair, I can respond to the issues. Thank you for the questions, and I'm going to ask Rikus to just
Sorry,
give a little bit.
Mr. Malila, I do apologize. Honorable Maria, I missed you. You can come in quickly before we go over to Mr. Malila. Honorable Maria.
I want to apologize to you and the Premier. There's something urgently come up that requires my urgent attention. But before I leave, if you'll permit me to compliment the Premier on his handling of COVID. I want to do this because I've been a critic at times, but I could see the pressure he was under. He himself was infected. We got to appreciate what he's done. He's worked night and day, and I can see he's put 200% in his effort to do what he's done thus far, in spite of budget cuts. And I want to compliment you, Premier, for the work that you've done in your team. And I wish that God will protect you and that you will lead this province to successes. I must unfortunately go, but I thought before I go, I must say I support this budget. I support the Premier's presentation, and I want to wish him God's richest blessings.
Thank you, Margaret, and safe travels. Premier,
Chair,
you wanted to
I just said thank you to the honourable member. Thank you very much.
Mr. Malila.
Chair, no, thank you very much. Let me just respond, and I'm going to also respond in aggregate, particularly to the issues raised by Member Dugmore and yourself, and then Drikas can just deal, I think, with the detail as it relates to Microsoft licenses, and then I'll just touch on what our plans are in relation to Cromaria. Chair, in aggregate, our budget reduction is 73.675 million, as you can see in the document. You're absolutely correct. The biggest part of that, close to 50 million, it's 48.835 million, relates to COE cuts. This all relates to basically the National Treasury requirement for public services wages to be curtailed. A large portion of that 48 million basically relates to the salary adjustments that's been provided for in the budget that's now been taken out, given the fact that National has removed the money, and it also depends on obviously the outcome of the current court case around wages that is being handled by National. In relation to the question, particularly from member Dugmore, obviously what we've done in the department relates also to some realignment, particularly in the vote. We've also received some monies into the vote. I think it's about 14.5 million rand. That relates obviously to money primarily within the CI environment for software systems, also some funding in relation to open text, and then also some of the VoIP services that's been provided, and then also for cloud computing services, particularly as it relates to the Department of Health. The 1.5 million issue that's been raised by member Dugmore in relation to NPOs, it's a 1.5 million that we had in our budget that we've now actually shifted to the Department of Economic Development for the implementation of the safety plan initiatives as it relates to economic development, and that will be done through the EDP. So the money was originally put under NPOs, but that's now moved to the Department of Economic Development. It's in fact it's actually for exactly the same services. Chair, so in aggregate, we've actually made our belts much more tight. And I'm sure yesterday in the presentation from the Treasury, they've demonstrated why all of us actually had to do it. And then I've already spoken about, I think, some of the shifts that we've made, particularly in relation to Program 2, as it relates to the Children Commissioner. Chair, I must indicate, and I mean, we've spoken about this also previously, as it relates to the Program 2, primarily the Children Commissioner and some internal shifts, obviously, given the non-filling of some of the positions. In Program 3, primarily within the HR space. And then Program 4 is obviously dealing and compensating for the issues that we had to redirect some of our funding towards responding to COVID-19 priority, primarily within the broadband space, and then also, issues about equipping staff to actually deal with some of the issues. Chair, on the Microsoft licensing that you particularly raised, 9.6 million of our department's vote in this year has been repurposed for licensing, as our ICT software license contract were impacted by the weakened rate of exchange. And obviously, it's a very tricky issue on when you decide to pay. Obviously, the rate of exchange has weakened given the negative impact of COVID on the global economy, and Driekus can indicate at what point we've actually paid it. So we've watched the exchange rate very carefully, particularly over the COVID period. I mean, there's been uncertainty in the space, but we have repurposed some of our money to deal with the risk around the exchange rate. It's also an issue that we've brought to the attention of the Treasury in particular. And then, Chair, lastly, also responding to the question of Minister Dugmore, if you go to Program 5, obviously Program 5 has been impacted by the massive communication campaign that we had to fund from our vote and ran obviously under the corporate and also strategic communication banner to the broader public in the province around COVID-19. So we've repurposed 4.1 million of our own budget to deal with the comms responsibility as it relates to COVID-19. And you may recall, Chair, in the first adjustment, there's also been money that's been allocated particularly for communication research. And I mean, our own anticipation, given where the COVID numbers are going, that's potentially an area where we will have to invest a little bit more to actually get the messaging over to people out there that, in fact, COVID is not over and that we need to do what we need to do to actually deal with the issues around COVID. So, Chair, in aggregate, those were the programs that's been impacted by the shifts. I don't know whether Driekus maybe wants to add anything.
Thanks, Chair. Just to note that the window to pay the MS licenses is roughly July, August. And at the time, there was extreme volatility in the markets. So we were able to pay at around 17.59 rand. You will also note that the the rate was as weak as 19, just over 19 Rand at some point. Obviously, the invoice has a due date and one has to pay, so we waited it out. But the current rates of 15 Rand plus was not the case at the time. So that's the timing of the payment. Thanks, Chair.
Chair.
Before you remember, Damo, just with regards to Cromerie, Malila.
Chair, in fact, the initial hard lockdown period at Cromeria, we couldn't offer face-to-face training.
Yeah.
I think we've already communicated that. You may also recall that we've used Cromeria as an isolation facility at the point in time. We have repurposed some of our courses, and Mr. Hendrikse is on the call, so he can maybe give a little bit more detail. So we are offering hybrid e-learning courses at the moment at Cromeria. But you must also remember, Chair, there are some kind of fixed expenditure that we need to pay, like the electricity and all those things. So that continues. We need to pay the staff that's responsible, but we've already shifted our headspace in relation to that. And there are also some training courses in the legal environment, particularly around legal services. That's also been presented at Cromeria. Those courses have also now been moved onto an platform. So we've been responsive over the last couple of months, and we have reflected that obviously in the documents that has gone to Cabinet. I don't know, Michael, if you maybe want to add, or is that enough, Chair?
That's enough. Thanks. I'll ask some written questions on it. Thank you. Mr. Dagmo?
Yeah, Chair, I'm aware, we've got 19 pages to deal with, but I'd just like to ask in terms of the compensation of employees, that 49 million, I'm just trying to get an understanding of this. Are we anticipating, because remember there was the initial presentations about the wage freeze, and trying to get an understanding as to whether, you obviously can't not pay medical aid, but there's going to be a freeze. So is that 49 anticipating essentially the wage freeze, or is it more an amount which is going to reduce so that new appointments cannot be made? I'm just trying to understand whether this reduction is anticipating the wage freeze and then factoring in, reduced amounts, or like you're not going to pay an inflation-linked increase or whatever, or is it simply means that you cannot make new appointments that were initially allocated when in March? Could someone help me on that? I know it affects the other departments as well, but I'm just trying to find out exactly what this wage freeze means.
Yeah. Chair, can I respond? And I mean, Driekus can give the detailed numbers. It's a combination, Chair. I mean, I'm sure you would have noticed in yesterday's presentation that was given by the Treasury, the amount that was cut from national, and I'm talking under correction, I think was an amount of about 2.3 billion Rand, was more than what we've provided for wage increases in our respective departments. And Driekus can give you the example in our vote. So the amount that's been deducted from our vote is firstly based on the wages that we're not going to, or the increase in the wages that we're not going to pay. So it relates to the percentage increase for 2020, particularly 2020, 2021. And then there is a component, Chair, where we're not going to proceed with the filling of certain posts, because obviously what's been taken away from the province is more than what we've provided for. So we had to take a decision to say certain positions, after we've obviously looked at what we need to do, what are those critical positions, we are simply not going to continue with. And internally in the department, we're repurposing, we're re-looking at doing our work fundamentally different. So where we typically had, as an example, particularly in the administrative staff, a model of maybe one personal assistant to a senior manager, we are now starting to share people. We're also repurposing some of our staff to do work that obviously we had certain vacancies for in the department. We just simply do not have enough money to cater for it, Chair, and that is actually the issue. So you need to freeze the stuff on the one side, because that's a national decision. The money has been taken away. But on the other hand, if you have less money to fill staff, You then had to look at what are the key staff that you need and how do we actually decide on what we fill and what we not fill. I would maybe also like to make a last point, Chair. Internally in the department, it is not just a blanket decision that gets taken by a person. We've got a budget committee that we've established. Anybody that wants to fill any positions, it goes to that budget committee. You need to properly motivate it. We look at what it is that you need to do. Is it aligned to our strategic plan of the department? Is it aligned to where we're going as a province? And is that particular post urgent or not? And if it's not urgent, we kind of communicate in a nice way that we do not have money to fill it. So we are mindful that our key services must continue, and we have provided for those people. So currently in that budget, Chair, we've provided to pay people up until the end of March. So for this year, we shouldn't have a problem as it relates to COE. Driekus, can you maybe just give the breakdown to the member what relates to the wage freeze and what portion relates to repurposing of our staff or savings within the COE space?
Thanks, Chair. Just the ICS portion, that would have been the wage increases. That was 37 million rand. What was taken away in the national process is 48 million. We have shifted an additional 10 million for our budget pressures in CEI, as DG mentioned. So that's how you get to the numbers. Just to note that the warm body count or the filled post count as at 30 September was utilized to make the cuts. And these cuts will actually carry through into the medium term. So that explains if one had plans to fill posts, let's say earlier this year, and you haven't had that post filled by 30 September, you lose the money. That's the implication. So at the moment, we look at retirements, resignations. If those monies become available, obviously one can fill not necessarily the same post, but based on criticality, the budget committee will then determine further on that. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Members, we continue page 4, 5, and 6. I see 7 is just the actual the reasons. 8 some 9 8 summary of 9 summary of receipts, expenditure trends. So perhaps we can go from page 4 until page 7 or 8, that we can continue with the next round of questions. Well, members are just focusing on that. Mr. Malila, you said something that, and I think the CFO just spoke to it as well, sharing of staff. Where, and perhaps where does this, or when did it, or did the conversation with staff take place? Because obviously it's a very personal conversation about sharing of staff members, because you're now not recruiting somebody else. You now need to share the workload. Obviously people understand it's a pandemic. How is that, and is there sort of psychological counseling or conversations taking place that make staff at ease and say that people don't start to rebel and start to look for other opportunities outside? Members, can you have the second round of questions, please?
Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, Member Dugmore.
Thanks. If I could, you know, because I'm now on the, you know, looking at the documents, I wasn't able to raise my hand, but the DG did refer to the issue of the Children's Commissioner in his opening remarks, and I see on page 5, I think it is, under the realignment of the budget, there's a reference there to the 4.8 surrender, and then the DG also gave us a bit of background. You see, I think that at this point in time, during the lockdown, I mean, the children as a sector of our society in the province, you know, are particularly vulnerable. So it does concern me that what appears, you know, from the DG's response is that since the appointment of the Children's Commissioner in June, from what I heard, and if this is, if I heard correctly, the other staff members to help the Children's Commissioner would only come on board in January. So effectively, we've had a Children's Commissioner on her own, from June. So I would just like to ask, because obviously the Children's Commissioner, besides, trying to follow up on particular issues that come to her attention, there's also the issue of communicating the fact that the office is around and available to assist people. So effectively, can I just ask, so where actually is the Children's Commissioner sitting, and is she literally on her own, or does she have a PA? Does she have any staff at all? And if you could just have an update again about what is the overall staff establishment envisaged for the Commissioner? I think the DG mentioned an assistant director or something like that, but and then just a quick explanation as to which specific appointments will be made in January and who is with the Commissioner at the moment in her office. That's what I wanted to ask, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. Member Regan Ellery.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. I am partly covered by the introductory remarks on the Children's Commissioner as well as Member Dugmore's question, but I must add, it has been amazing to see all the media coverage that the Children's Commissioner has been able to garner since taking office as well. But my question relates to the surrendered amount for the broadband municipalities project funding. Obviously, in COVID-19, we've seen how we are doing stuff digitally and the importance of Wi-Fi. Is there an estimated time for when that would be resuming? But also, I want to echo the sentiments expressed by Member Marais earlier on, and to thank the DG as well as the Premier for their contribution and the engagement so far. So well done to the Premier and the DG as well as the department. Thank you.
Thank you, members. Before we continue, do you by any chance had a look at the rest of your documents, including annexures, that you'd like to pose another question to at this point?
So which...
any other question that you might want to pose? I'm just worried about the time. So before the DG responds, we'll come back again, but I just thought let me use the opportunity to just get another one or two questions in that you have on any part of the document.
Yeah, Chair, if I could also just possibly ask, I don't know if we can get a breakdown now, but on one of the pages, I just made a note when I had a look at the vote, the non-profit expenditure up to now, I think has been 20,300,000. So I'm not sure if the DG can just give us a quick sense verbally about what that has gone to, and then we can possibly ask the committee coordinators to record that as one of our requests for an actual breakdown of the organizations and the amounts that have been allocated in terms of the not-for-profit organizations. And then if I could just, I saw there that there was some impact on public Wi-Fi hotspots due to the lockdown. Once again, if we could just have a quick update as to where we are with public Wi-Fi hotspots. Are we proceeding with the installation on that? And then also just to have an actual written reply, arising from this, which would literally outline for us every hotspot that has been installed and its location across the province. And if we could just be reminded possibly now, what is the, if a member of the public goes there and logs in, what level of data can they access on a daily basis, or just remind us how that works? Is it a daily allocation of data? Because I presume you have to enter with a code. I'd actually like to go to one spot and just try it out myself. And then, or is it done on a monthly basis? If we could just be informed about that, because I think those Wi-Fi spots are absolutely critical, especially if people, are not able to access government services in a, coming physically. Those Wi-Fi hotspots, obviously with social distancing, which I presume is happening at those hotspots, is absolutely critical to keep people connected to information and to access the government. Thanks.
Thank you, Member Dugmore. Thank you for all those question, members. Mr. Malila, can I ask you to try and answer all of those in under 2 minutes? And those written responses, you're welcome to send it in writing, because I'd also like a latest report on the broadband project, but we will do that after the meeting. If you can just give the succinct with those responses. Thank you.
Chair, I will be succinct. Let me deal with the questions of Mr. Dugmore, Member Dugmore, as it relates to the Children Commissioner. The Children Commissioner was appointed, as I've indicated, during June. I must indicate, although she's been appointed, there's been lots of activity. So our communication team, all the branding stuff, they've helped to actually develop that. So there's specific branding as it relates to the Children Commissioner. We've supported her internally, and I spoke about, reallocating and repurposing staff. So with all her activities, particularly that she did on the West Coast, our team have supported her from program 2. We've allocated a person to fulfill the PA function, so she's definitely not on her own. There is, I think, 11 positions that's been earmarked for or 12 posts that's been earmarked for the Children Commissioner, noting that her appointment is statutory. All the others are appointed, by government. And we're also looking, obviously, Chair, at the process of even, looking internally, particularly with some of the administrative staff to support us. So she's got a level 13, 2 DDs, 3 ASDs, and then also a Children's Commissioner officers. And we, at the moment, supporting on all the administrative stuff. So that's with the traveling and all those things. But I mean, if there's further information, we can definitely actually deal with that. Chair, I agree. I can give you in writing all the detail as it relates to the non-profit organizations. On the public Wi-Fi issue, Chair, maybe for Member Dagmo, I think the closest one to Parliament is right below you in the concourse. There's also a sign up there. You can definitely log in. And I'm sure Hilton, who's also in the call, can provide further detail, but I can also do that in writing just to indicate to you where the hotspot locations are and also how it particularly works. But if Member Dagmo wants to test it, there's one right at the bottom in the concourse opposite the restaurant. Chair, on the broadband in municipalities, obviously we were restricted by approvals, the way leave approvals and stuff like that, given the lockdown. But what we've agreed with the Treasury is that the money that we're taking away this year is reallocated next year because we believe in this project. We believe it makes a huge difference. So we're going to definitely continue with the rollout next year or further rollout next year. So that deals with the questions of Member Allen. Just in relation to the Children Commissioner, she's got the offices in town. She's indicated it's not appropriate because obviously she's looking for a place where children can access. So we've put steps in place to engage with public works, and so she's gone out there in communities to actually look for a place, Chair. She's indicated to me that she's almost identified a place, and then once she's identified the place, we will then put the process in place to actually procure through a open public process. Chair, I think those are all the responses.
Thank you very much. We will have made notes of the things that we need to be sent, and we will get all the login details from Member Dagmo as well. Members, any critical question that we can't put in writing?
Just the last one from my side, Chair, is there's a column there which indicates total preliminary expenditure. I just can't find it, but I'm sure the CFO or the DG, could. And I just noticed that the last column, is exactly the same as the first. In other words, although it's preliminary expenditure, the amount is exactly the same. So I think later on there is also actual expenditure, which indicates the progress of spending. So that could just be clarified. My very last question, I think, is, these area-based teams in regard to the safety plan, could someone just explain what they do? There's a reference to area-based teams, I think, linked to the economy as part of the safety plan. Could someone just explain what those teams actually do?
Thank you, Mr. Marila. You have 1 minute to respond. Thank you.
Chair, the area-based teams will be established, obviously, in areas, particularly, where our tourists come. So they will work as part of our safety plan initiatives to help, particularly municipalities, to make the environment much more safer. So they will work hand in hand, and it's all about, making the environment safer for the economy to grow. So that one deals with that question. And I think, Driekus, you can probably just quickly respond to the other one. The preliminary expenditure is obviously an estimated number, Chair, up until the end of the year, and it would generally equal the budget, because at this point in time, we do not project to underspend our budget when it gets to the end of the year. And that's the simple reason why those two numbers are the same.
Thank you.
Thank you.
CFO, 30 seconds.
No further comment, Chair.
Yeah, I've responded already.
Thank you, Mr. Doug Mosfine. Premier and your team, thank you very much for coming this morning. We've made some notes on what we need to get from your team in writing. We do appreciate it. And thank you for making yourself available for this morning. Much appreciated. Have a lovely day. Members, can we just continue?
Thank
So,
you.
Premier, you wanted to say something?
No, I just said thank you, Chair. Thanks, and thanks, DG.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Members, we can just continue. I've made some notes on the documents that we will require from the department. If Member Maria Member Doug just confirm that this is what we need. One is on the safety, the broadband, just the latest report on the broadband. That's something I would also like to want. Secondly, the latest report on the status of the Children's Commissioner and all the support that the department has provided for her. And then the third one, you wanted the safety ambassadors, just what is their role in terms of the safety plan, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. And remember also the list of all the community Wi-Fi hotspots.
Yes.
And then also just like a little narrative as to exactly how community members access that and the amount of data that they get daily or monthly. Yeah.
I've got that. Thank you very much. Wasima, did you capture those 4 points correctly?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, and we just the NPOs.
The NPOs, yes. Sorry, I forgot that.
20,300,000.
I've got it here on page 9. Thank you very much. Members, anything else that we might?
Yeah, Chair. I think it was interesting that the committee heard that the staff establishment as at, I think they said, the warm body count September. Could we actually just get that detail? What is the warm body count set as of September for this department? Thanks.
Thank you. We've got that. Wasima, you've captured all 6 items?
Sorry, Chair?
You've captured all those 6 items.
Yes, I've got everything. Thank you.
Thank you very much, members. Thank you for the spirit in which meeting was held and sticking to the time. I really appreciate it. I'm sure we're all going to have a coffee break and join whichever committee you join in the next 15 minutes.
Chair?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Wasima.
Chair, sorry. The committee needs to adopt the...
Oh, yes, sorry. I knew I've got a page.
Chairperson?
Yes.
Chairperson?
Yes.
If I can move that we would support the vote, sir.
Thank you. There was a seconder. Remember, Maria already indicated he supported. That's why I didn't. Yeah. Thank you. Noted. Medagmo?
Yeah. Chairperson, I just need to be reminded of the
minority view will be noted on the report. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is in terms of a particular rule.
I think we will put a formal rule in. Yes.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, is it not Rule 90?
I think so too. But we will capture it, Mr. Member Doug, but don't worry, you will receive the draft report.
Remember, I don't know if you want to take 2 minutes just to adopt the minutes also.
Okay, yeah, we can adopt the minutes of the 24th, yeah. Just can you put it on the screen quickly? So just for record purposes, the committee has agreed to support the report, and the ANC's minority view in terms of Rule 90 will be noted, but the formal writing will be sent to all members. Wasima, can you put the minutes of the 24th on the screen?
I think it's Rule 86, Chair.
Yeah, so we'll capture it according with the rules of Parliament. Don't worry, Member Dougman, we will do that. Thank you. The meeting of the 24th. That's page 1. Those people were present. Page 2. Yep. And now that the meeting is, Wasima, just on that point, 4.2, I've spoken, Member Dagmar, to Member Chairperson of Education. She has spoken with the Commissioner, and they are setting up that meeting. But now that the minutes adopted, we will send you a formal letter in that regard.
Sure, Chair. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, can I just ask, is that meeting likely to happen before the end of the year?
Oh, that will have to speak to the programming committee. I really doubt it, because we're finishing in 2 weeks' time. But we can find out. We can find out from them.
Chair, I think that concludes everything. Either
Yeah,
the
Member
members
Randa.
adopt the minutes.
Adopt the minutes as proposed, Chairperson.
Thank you. Thank you, members. Thank you for the meeting.
Thank
That's
you.
everything we've done. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.